Recently, I had a Facebook status that caused a bit of a stir amongst some of my friends. I wrote that every day you talk about Trump's tweets is another day you're not talking about things that matter, like the wars, the debt, and the Fed. But you didn't care about that shit under Obama, so why start now, right? Perhaps this does have a bit of ambiguity, but as many people have misconstrued what I wrote, and because I believe that what I said does have some merit, I will try to draw it out as best I can. So let's begin with some qualifiers. I have never been a supporter of President Trump. From the outset, I was against Donald Trump as a presidential candidate. I disagreed heartily with the sentiment of libertarians for Trump, the movement begun by the otherwise esteemed Walter Block. His case of voting for Trump if one were a libertarian within a swing state was logical and pragmatic. However, it was, to me, indicative of where political calculation will lead one, namely away from strong philosophical grounds. And just so I'm playing fair, Gary Johnson, anyone? Now, I've spoken multiple times of late on the Subversive Liberty podcast of my distaste for what I call a crudeness in language. I consider myself someone who chooses his words very carefully. And other than some good-natured ribbing that might occur with alcohol amongst friends and family, I try to refrain from ad hominem attacks and instead prefer to get Socratic with people whom I might otherwise be in agreement with. The question of whether it is beneath the dignity of the office, however, is entirely irrelevant to me. It should be the case that it is beneath the dignity of every person to unnecessarily insult others in such a crass manner like we see with the president. That, however, is merely my opinion, and one not shared by many a political commentator on the websites and in the cable news. A very easy inference one can draw from my posts is that Trump's tweets don't matter at all, and perhaps that's where people got off track. See, my comments were not directed so much at an individual person, but in the way the larger construction of the media narrative occurs in the United States. At the heart of this is the question, to me, of what the issues of the day should be. And as we know, in the 21st century, the issue is not actually having access to information, but wading through the massive amounts of it and distinguishing between what is necessary and what is unimportant. In this regard, media outlets of every size have the ability to shape the reality we perceive by what they choose to cover or choose not to cover in many cases, and will leave aside how they cover stories for another time. From the million-dollar studios of Fox and CNN to my makeshift set at home, there is only so much time that people can dedicate to distilling information into a consumable format. And if this was not an issue, media as we know it now or knew it then never need have existed. That is to say, we are not omniscient creatures capable of ultimate knowledge. We are limited, and recognizing anything else is a case of hubris. In my estimation, one that I believe is shared amongst libertarians, some of the most important issues of the day are the foreign and domestic wars the U.S. government wages, the war on drugs being an example of a domestic war, a debt-laden society that puts not only the government but individuals and families in a precarious situation, and the system of central banking and fiat currency that has come to dominate this modern world and supports our credit-driven society. What President Obama was able to accomplish through his charm and a friendly media, I believe President Trump has turned on its head and accomplished the same very mission. That is to say, distract the American public from the horrors the governments commit. It is no secret that trust in the media, especially cable news and other major outlets, has declined as of late. And a major part of candidate Trump's appeal, whether you like it or not, was his confrontational style with major outlets like CNN and the New York Times. Now, whether or not Trump believes or even cares about the unbecoming things he tweets or not, he uses his supporters' distrust of the media and his opponents' blinding hatred to influence the narrative. Where the media was enamored with Obama, they are enamored with hating and discrediting the Trump campaign and now the Trump presidency. One criticism of the original status, whose meaning should be a little bit clearer now, was questioning just what one individual can do about the wars. And I think that the answer is the same there as it was under President Obama. I was asked the day after Trump was elected what I thought about the election, and I responded by saying nothing has changed. The same types of people, namely politicians, were going to engage in the same types of tomfoolery we've come to expect. And from the perspective of not only ending our interventionist foreign policies, but ending the drug war and other unnecessary government intrusions, nothing had changed. And those are the issues that matter, creating a more free and prosperous society in the process. And as to what the individual can do, exactly what I'm trying to do with this piece. Force people to question the motives of the media and the morality of the policy. It doesn't take a lot of gumption to say that the president's tweets are dumb. It does take a lot to say that our actions in the Middle East have made the world less safe, created a vacuum for organizations like Daesh, as well as contributing to the migrant and refugee crisis we see in Europe. To prove my point further, I will simply add that the only time the media has resoundingly called Trump's actions presidential was when he bombed an airfield in Syria. Another criticism was that by saying you didn't care about it under Obama, I am hampering American politics. The point being that I have, quote, perpetuated that false binary by contrasting the relative silence under Obama to the outrage under Trump. The difference between the men is the decorum in the office. I frankly could not have asked for a better way to emulate frustrates me about this entire trope. I don't care when the Obama White House comes on TV and massages the bombing of a hospital in Afghanistan or the collateral damage see innocent children in the latest drone strike. I care that children died. I don't care that Trump talks about law and order. I care that the war on drugs is a multi-billion-dollar industry that incarcerates innocents and turns them into criminals. Both of these government programs, which we as citizens are forced to pay for, have not made the world better, and we certainly aren't safer for them being implemented. It's really not a difficult idea to wrap your head around, and the fact that these factors do not bring shame to the American people and the politicians who rule us in their perfect wisdom should tell you something about the standard political value structure and the media narrative that envelops it. There is no moral high ground for being mad at Trump making fun of people while ignoring the crimes committed by past presidents. In fact, Trump is the ugly reality of what politics is: violence, corruption, and brutes imposing their will on others. Now, this shouldn't be the way we conduct ourselves. We as Americans, and really we as all humans, should strive for a free and peaceful society, one that doesn't aggress on the rights of individuals. It's a radical concept in today's world to imagine a state that doesn't tell you the precise manner in which you must start a business or tax your vices. But it is possible. If we stop spending trillions on killing, imagine what people could come together and do voluntarily. My name is Brian Thornton, and this has been a Subversive Liberty Short. Please go to subversiveliberty.org/subscribe to find us everywhere. And let me know what you think about this video and the original piece linked below. Thank you.